Hello everybody, welcome to StraightA, Dawson here, back with another video for another Monday video. It's probably going to be up late because I'm recording this late, getting out together late because, man, it's been a week. I've been saying that a lot, it's been a week. If you watch some other videos, probably noticed the webcam is a little bit in a different spot, top right corner rather than bottom right. For this video, I'm going to have to readjust things, so we'll see how this camera angle goes, or this camera position goes. Either way, it's going to be more of a unique video. This isn't the series I was necessarily looking for Mondays, but I think it's going to be a filler until I really hammer down what Monday is going to be, because I'm struggling big time, boys. But I think in the meantime, we're going to have fun with a quarterly checkup. So this is week 4. Actually, if you notice in the top left corner, the Seattle Seahawks and Giants game's going on right now. I really just couldn't watch it, I'll be honest. I kind of just didn't. It just wasn't too much for me, or just wasn't too much. It was just something to me. I was like, whatever. I'm not really too enthralled by the game. So I was like, well, let me go ahead and record the video and I'll keep up with it and maybe catch the second half or something if it gets interesting. So I decided to go ahead and record the video, but we can keep an eye on the score in the top left corner. Fun time. Seattle's currently leading. So excellent in that regard. Anyway, so this is going to be kind of a video series since we are done pretty much week 4 besides Seattle and Giants. We're going to go ahead and start the quarterly checkup. Now, quarterly checkup would be more accurately described as 4.5 weeks into the year. But, I'm not going to do halfway through week 4 or halfway through week 5 just to, do a quarterly checkup. So we're just going to go ahead and get week 4, at the end of week 4 as the quarterly checkup. And I won't be doing I won't be doing Seattle Seahawks or the Giants in their divisions. I'll be doing some other ones. But basically, I'm going to do all the cardinal directions, so north, south, east, and west over the next 4 weeks. And I'm going to be repeating that. So for this quarterly checkup, this week we're doing the AFC and NFC North, and kind of evaluating their current standings, their possible future standings, the rest of their schedule, what their current stats have been looking like, and just kind of talking about them real quick, each of the 8 teams. I figured this is going to be more of an in-depth talk conversation, so I want to limit to 8 teams per one, and we'll do cardinal directions throughout the next 4 weeks, and then maybe we'll do a halfway through the season checkup, or if I have another series going on, maybe we'll continue it, maybe we won't. We'll see. It depends on the views for it. Maybe if it's one of the more successful ones, then we'll go with it. If it's not, then we'll see if I scrap it. But it's kind of nice for me to kind of just check up and see from like a big point of view, big picture, where all these teams are kind of sitting. And honestly, the AFC and NFC North are the teams I feel most like I've changed on. Like I feel like I've seen a lot. I feel like all the other divisions, maybe except for the South, or I guess cardinal directions, I feel pretty like I need to see more from them. So I think East and West, I think I need to see more from them. But the North and South feel pretty solid. The South is just so mid. I want to see like one more week from them, so maybe they'll be next while I see the other 2 kind of establish themselves more. But the North, I feel pretty confident in my sayings right now, so I'm going to start with them first so I can get the idea of what this is actually going to be going forward. So we're going to go ahead and get started here. The AFC North, looking at the standings here in the bottom, middle right corner. Baltimore Ravens currently lead the pack with 3-1. Pittsburgh Steelers and Cleveland Browns are up next with 2-2. Pittsburgh having a slight upside advantage. I forgot the exact tiebreaker for that one because they haven't played yet, have they? Don't believe so. And then Cincinnati leads out the bottom 1-3 currently. And so that's the current standings, and we're going to break it down from top to bottom on each of the divisions. So this is the AFC North, of course, first. And we're going to go through their stats and their schedule. And I may take a quick look at their roster and depth chart, but that won't be like too much of a big thing for me. I'll just kind of look at it and see if there's anything interesting kind of keep in mind. So anyway, let's go to the stats real quick. At the Baltimore Ravens, they seriously have been one of the more impressive teams for me this season. I knew they were going to be good, but I think Lamar Jackson truly on the ground is who he was again. And he's kind of showing the Cam Newton style of things, but maintaining it. That's something I always get nervous with scrambling QBs, is how well they're able to maintain that. And he's not the greatest passer. I mean, that's what, we're averaging about 200 yards per game. 198.5 yards per game. He's thrown maybe a couple long touchdowns, but 52 long yardage there. He's only thrown 4 touchdowns in 4 games. Not horrible, but could definitely be better. 1 interception, not too bad there. Taking 11 sacks. I guess that's somewhere in the mid-range, but I think it's a little bit more than usual. I'm not too sure on the style there. I guess we'll see as the other teams kind of show. But he's 74.3 completion percentage right now, which is actually pretty solid. Pretty solid from him. So he's at least being safe. Let's see, rushing yards, he's got 220, but I guess we can look over here. He's the top rusher by far at 220 yards. So again, averaging per game 55 yards. That's pretty dang good. Let's see, how many touchdowns? He's ran for 4 touchdowns too. So, I mean, combine his 4 throwing touchdowns and 4 rushing touchdowns, I think we can forgive him a little bit. Meanwhile, we're looking at the other rushing kind of games. No J.K. Dobbins usually number one there, but he's currently out. So meanwhile, the other three, Gus Edwards, Justice Hill, Melvin Gordon III, kind of sharing reps. Gus Edwards has been getting a little bit more reps because of these two, well, Justice Hill's injuries, while Melvin Gordon's kind of just been the, hey, I'm here if you need me type role. But Gus Edwards and Justice Hill probably split these more and more. And they've been doing fairly fine, in terms of their yardage and everything. Not anything too special in the run game. The run game has gone through Lamar Jackson and will continue to go through Lamar Jackson until it doesn't. And we got some non-important ones. In terms of the current receivers for that team, Zay Flowers has been a really nice target. Kind of the weirdest one of that because you feel like they bring in Odell Beckham. They have Mark Andrews. I'm trying to think. Didn't they have somebody else that they brought in? I'm trying to remember on the top of my head. I guess Zay Flowers, was one of the guys that is kind of was pointed out to in Baltimore as being one of the guys. He's definitely a good target. He hasn't really gotten his touchdown yet, but he's been targeted quite a few times, definitely majority of the times here. Getting a lot of the receptions as well, even over Mark Andrews, who has been normally in the past been the main guy for the the Baltimore quarterback, but Lamar Jackson especially. And he's gotten still the goal line touches, but goal line catches. Well, everybody else kind of playing a little bit. Odell Beckham has got a touchdown this year. Nelson Aguilar is, rejuvenating his career a little bit, so that's pretty cool to see. Otherwise, kind of quiet from the receiving game. I think it's really a Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews type game. Nelson Aguilar has, come back a little bit, I guess, but not really consistently. Rashad Bateman's currently injured, so we'll see how much of a role he plays. And Odell Beckham, we'll see how much more we get from him. Otherwise, on their defense, let's look at their sacks and everything. Can I sort this? I think I can, maybe. We're just going to load the whole page. Oh, there we go. Pretty quiet in the sack range, so they really haven't been too much on that regard. How many interceptions? We'll see how many kind of... Oh, okay, so we got Geno Stone with 2 interceptions so far. It's pretty cool. Otherwise, seem kind of quiet. Forced fumbles, whatever. I wish it would tell me where their defense is ranked, because that would be kind of nice. Shows the scoring, which I probably won't go over too much on. Returning, I'm not really going to touch on that much. But the defenses for the Ravens has been one of the better ones. And actually, give me 1 second. All right, now I'm back. So I found this, what's called on the NFL website, a nice little current 2023 rankings for like how many yards they've led up. Now it's kind of technically skewed since the Giants and Ravens Giants and Seahawks have not played their games, so we can kind of put an asterisk by them. And I guess we're gonna continue as we kind of see where they're ranked and stuff like that. There's gonna be bye weeks here starting next week, which is another reason why I think it's a good week to start this video. Now that we've seen the first 4 weeks of full competitive play. Anyway, beside the point. Moving on, seeing here from the passing game on defense. I'm just gonna look at this defensively. I'm not really gonna look at it offensively. We've seen the numbers, and I think we're able to interpret that. But I think defense is hard to interpret just from interceptions, tackles. Stuff like that. So we're going to see how many yards they actually really do let up in terms of that. And in terms of passing, they're a top 5 defense. They've been really good about that, and that's really awesome to see that their defense has been holding up so well. In terms of rushing, actually I'm very curious as well now how many rushing yards they've really let up. And I'm not going to look at as much at scoring because I think the yards will kind of overall match to that. But they are close to a top 5 team in rushing yards too. Of course, Seahawks are up there too. They're at 370. So they have a nice little gap in between them and the Browns, but still not too bad in that regard. I guess that you can kind of look at like yards per actual carry and stuff like that. So 3.8 compared to these other teams who are letting up a lot less. And if we look back at passing real quick, I'm now curious as well about their overall attempts. So 165, so 61.2% on completion. So that's kind of comparable. It's comparable to the top 5 teams. Yards per attempt, 4.1. So I mean, very interesting there. Overall, the Ravens have been really, really good as of late, and kind of going into their schedule for the rest of the season. I'm not going to do any predictions here or anything. I'm just going to kind of quickly scan through them. But they face Pittsburgh. Could be like pretty easy victory for them. Tennessee's been kind of an on and off team, so we'll see. Of course, they've already beaten the Texans. Cincinnati lost to Indianapolis, probably in a game they probably shouldn't have lost, but let it up. So take that as you will. And they beat Cleveland, another divisional opponent. So they've been pretty successful. I mean, they've won these games pretty handily too, aside from Cincinnati, but a win's a win. And they did lose against Indianapolis. But some of these other teams are very beatable. So Tennessee, I think that is in a is that in Germany? I can't remember. I don't think that one's in Germany. Is it? Can't remember on the top of my head. But anyway, Pittsburgh's easily beatable. Tennessee's easily beatable. Detroit, as long as they can keep up with the scoring and maybe slow them down just a little bit, is very beatable. Arizona, very beatable. Seattle, depends. Got to see really how more they can play, but it's definitely a very winnable game. More divisional games, and this time they're at home for the Browns and Bengals, so it should be theoretically easier than the first time around. Still think they could let up one of those, but still, Los Angeles, maybe a tougher game. I think that's harder to keep up with them, but again, they are a very beatable team. Rams are beatable, Jacksonville's beatable, San Fran's one of their hardest games. Miami's also a very hard game, especially near the end of the season when when the games kind of get more important for them based on seeding. And Pittsburgh, I think, are very beatable as well. Again, being at home because they go to Pittsburgh this next time around. So they're currently at home quite a bit for their divisional games near the end. And they've gotten a lot of their away games done after week 5. And their bye week's 13, so nice little end of the season bye week. Very, very beatable. Very winnable schedule to end up 11-6, 10-7. Who knows where they can really land? But they're looking good, and I'm kind of scared for other teams in terms of the current standings of the Ravens because they look really good. It could easily keep this momentum going. And I see them kind of slowing down. I'll be honest. I think there's some games they're going to drop here. I think Detroit's a game they're going to drop. I think they're going to lose at least one of these games. Los Angeles feels like a team that can get that later in win. Maybe Los Angeles or Jacksonville takes them down. I think it's going to be really hard for them to beat San Fran or Miami. And then maybe drop, with Steelers or Tennessee type game. But, dropping about 4 or 5 more losses in their current one. So, that keeps them in 10-7, 11-6 range. So, very, very easily, since a good start with 3-1 really keeps them in the game a lot more. So, really fun to see. I don't know if I'm really going to look at roster here. We're not going to do that. We're going to look at depth chart, I guess, maybe rather. So Odell Beckham and Rashad Bateman are currently out. That's right. I forgot about Odell Beckham being called out. They have a lot of injuries. They are suffering from a lot of injuries, even defensively. Holy crap. Look at all these out, questionable, IR, out, or IR, questionable. Obviously, I don't know a lot of these players, but man, that's a lot of players to be out. So, honestly, one of the things that can maybe do them in to lose these games, a lot of their injuries starting to pile up, which is kind of fascinating to see. Well, not fascinating, but, worrisome to see that. But, they've been still looking good, even with the injuries mounting up. So, we'll see how the momentum continues. I still project them to be in the 10-7 range, where they're currently at. I don't know exactly what I had them in terms of range, but I project them about 10-7, being about where they're going to be at by the end of the season. Moving on, we're going to go to Pittsburgh and see the Pittsburgh Steelers. Going to be a little bit quicker on this one, I think, since we were kind of establishing a lot of things with Baltimore. Looking quickly at the stats here, Kenny Pickett's been fairly successful with 803 yards. Say what you will, completions percentage definitely could be a lot better, getting a lot of nerves in the pocket. 200.8 yards per game, 4 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Need to improve that a little bit. Sacks around the 11 mark, similar to the Baltimore Ravens. In terms of rushing, Najee still is the favorite in terms of carries and yards, so he's still getting those goal lines. He has no rushing touchdowns, though, currently from anybody on the team. So it's actually kind of a fascinating point out there. Let's see, 1 fumble from Jalen Moore, and they're still splitting carries, about 67-33, it looks like, in terms of just the overarching amount. So that's kind of cool to see they have a very dynamic offense in that regard. In terms of receiving, George Pickens has been easily the favorite target there. I didn't have to pull up the stats here to tell you that, but otherwise it's kind of been a free-for-all back there because of currently Deontay Johnson, I believe, has been suffering from some injuries, so that's been kind of unfortunate for him. Otherwise, like I said, it's kind of been dynamic for him. Pat Freiermuth did pick up 2 touchdowns. George Pickens only 1. Calvin Austin 3rd. Less familiar with him too, but it's been, outside of George Pickens, a fairly balanced game, so it's been pretty good for them. Meanwhile, on the sacks and interceptions type of thing, we'll go to their defensive rating currently. TJ Watt, of course, he's killing it. 6 sacks in 4 games. What's that if you do times 4 times 5-ish? He can get up towards that 20s range if he keeps that up and stays healthy. Interceptions, we got a couple here. Levi Wallace leading with 2 interceptions. Pretty cool. I'm going to quickly go over to the defensive rankings and see where they are in the passing. And they are somewhere. Oh, they're in the higher ones. They've let up 1,018 yards. I'm trying to remember what all these mean. So yards per attempt, completion percentage. So 59.7% completion percentage, which actually is fairly good for them to keep them down. But 7.1 yards per catch is pretty bad. So they've been letting up a lot of passing yards. So their secondary is definitely struggling a little bit to contain the teams. Now let's see their rushing and see how much they've really been holding the line. I think they're a little bit better in this regard. No, they're actually, well, I guess comparatively worse. They're bottom 5 in terms of this regard too. So they're actually suffering. So a Steelers defense, which has been historically really good, has been suffering a lot in the first 4 weeks. Even outside of those sacks and interceptions they've been getting, it's not been pretty, and their offense has also been struggling, which explains their 2-2. They're actually kind of fortunate to be a 2-2, which if we go back to their schedules, we can kind of look through and kind of explain. That's their roster. So we're going to change over their schedule. So currently they face San Fran, tough game. Cleveland, they beat Cleveland, they beat Las Vegas, 2 games they should have won, they should win. But Houston was also a very beatable game. Struggling against Houston, who is an underrated team. They are on the up and up, and I'm curious to see more from them, I think. But still, it was a game that was more winnable than, I think even all 3 of the other games, possibly. I guess maybe outside of Cleveland, just because it's a, divisional opponent. And they haven't really got their divisional opponents. They kind of split their home and away game so far, and they're going to be at home against Baltimore. Again, they're a tough team, divisional opponent. They could see a very big loss there. Looking at the rest of the season, it's kind of tough to kind of look at some of these games and say they feel like they should win some of these games, but I feel like they're going to blow it. Right now, I'm kind of just going to go off going to go with the story that they're going to split with Baltimore, and they're going to split with Cleveland, and they're going to split with Cincinnati and keep them at that 3-3. Seems like a very Steelers thing to do. I think historically they've been in that 4-2 range, but I may be wrong. I don't have a fact to back that up. But I mean, like Los Angeles or Baltimore, tough game. They might lose that one. Los Angeles, they could win that, but it's a tougher game still too. Jacksonville's still a tougher game. It's winnable, but tough. Tennessee, same thing there. Green Bay, same thing there. Some feisty teams here from 8 to 10. And a very early bye week, which kind of sucks. Cleveland, divisional opponent in Cleveland at Cincinnati. Arizona, New England, and Indianapolis should all be teams they should be able to get some wins back later on. And then looking at 16 through 18, they can maybe get a win out of there. They're looking close, like they're about to get that 9-8 again, but it's gonna be close. I'm not gonna doubt them and say that they won't be 9-8 because I think they're still on track to do it, and I don't think their schedule's outrageous to say they won't. Because I think that, easily, I think from Rams to Tennessee, they can win one of those games. Again, if they split the rest of their opponents, that's what's called 2 more. So that's 3 more. I think they can easily beat Green Bay and Arizona. Maybe New England could be tough. New England or Green Bay. So that's 6 wins, I think, so far. Indianapolis, easier victory, 7. They're gonna be close to that 8. 9-8 record. So I'm going to project them still at 9-8, but we'll see how it goes from there. It's going to be a hard road for them to actually make the playoffs because I thought they were going to do better than they have been. I thought Kenny Pickett was going to be a little bit more of a step up, but not really looking like that so far. So we'll see more from them and see how their halfway checkpoint kind of goes. But there's a lot of good, a lot of bad. Looking at their depth chart, I don't think they've suffered from too many injuries from what I recall, but we're about to find out right here. I guess on the defensive side of things more so. Cameron Hayward, a notable name there. Otherwise, Deontay Johnson, of course, and some questionables. Actually, Kenny Pickett's currently questionable, but they have some decent depth there, so I'm not too worried about them in that regard. Honestly, it might be a good breath of fresh air for Mitch Trubisky to get out there. Besides that point, wow, the punter's hurt? Wait, is that the punter? Okay. All right, cool. Nice to see. By the way, I did see the Giants get a field goal there, so that's pretty cool. Otherwise, Pittsburgh Steelers is just very iffy team. I still think they're going to be in the 9-8 range. They've been playing fine and then losing games they really shouldn't, but winning games they have been fighting for. So we'll see how the rest of the season goes, see how the Ravens game goes, but I'm still sticking with my 9-8 kind of thought process for them. Moving quickly on to the Cleveland Browns, who have been very, very lukewarm, question mark, on offense at least. Defensively, they've been really good. And I can already saw that from the defensive side of things. But beside the point, Deshaun Watson, mid stuff right here. Very low yardage though in the air. 2 interceptions though, so better than Kenny Pickett in that regard. 4 touchdowns only though. Jerome Ford has been a good, suitable replacement for Nick Chubb. I think Nick Chubb did play 2 games, and Jerome Ford, I guess, technically played 4, but he really only started 2. So take that as you will. Only got 1 rushing touchdown. In terms of receiving that, well, I guess their rushing game outside of Nick Chubb, obviously, has been pretty good. I mean, Deshaun Watson has rushed for a touchdown. Is a little bit mobile on his feet, while Pierre Strong and Kareem Hunt seems like suitable, good replacements for depth-wise again for Chubb. So get well soon, Chubb. It seems like it's a lot better of an injury, as much as injuries can be, than was originally expected. So prayers go up to him. In terms of receiving, Amari Cooper is easily still the favorite target there. I guess in terms of yards, I guess in terms of how he performs. But, I mean, Elijah Moore's right there with him in terms of targets. Now to look at it here. 31-29, and then it's a big drop-off. Which, I mean, Jerome Ford is even get some love there, and David Njoku has been decently there. Otherwise, hasn't been too much. Donovan Peoples-Jones, I guess, has been there. Outside of that, though, kind of wastelands. Kind of running through Amari Cooper, Elijah Moore, and David Njoku, and then Jerome Ford on the ground right now. So we'll see how that kind of maintains for the rest of the season. Mark Cooper, I think, has always been a solid receiver, and I'll expect to see those yardage still go up and up. He'll probably be a 1,000-yard receiver, but 259 is not too shabby so far. Defensively, just looking at quickly at sacks and stuff, which I don't think is necessarily where they excel, but Myles Garrett has been producing the sacks. Now I see it, 5.5. I haven't realized it's stacked up that much, and a lot of kind of other, other ones there. Interceptions, I think only one. Wasn't surprised on that. Their secondary is the weakest part of their defense, and we'll kind of showcase that here on the rushing side of things. The rushing yards allowed, I believe Cleveland, about top 5 or top 6 technically. 287 rushing yards allowed, 89 attempts, 3.2 yards per attempt, which is pretty dang good, pretty comparable to the rest of the teams there. Meanwhile, in the passing regards, they are the wow. Okay, I spoke too soon. The secondary seems to be doing something because 53.8% completions rating is pretty dang good to be, for defense. 4.7 yards per attempt is maybe a little bit higher than they would want it to be, but only letting up 500 yards, sorry, is not too bad for 4 weeks. So the defense is doing well, and it could be also due to the pressure that the defense is able to put on. And the teams they face are not as much of a good passing teams. They really haven't faced many good passing teams from what I remember. And if we look at that again real quick, I'm actually kind of curious about the teams they faced in terms of passing. So Cincinnati, Joe Burrow had that bad game. Pittsburgh, Kenny Pickett is just not as good. Tannehill, I can't remember if that was. I guess it was a good game from him, so it was 27-3. And then Lamar Jackson is more of an on-the-ground type guy, so he probably was a sub-200 game there too. So kind of curious in that regard. Looking quickly at the... Oh, wait, we got to look at the schedule. I kind of got ahead of myself there. Oh, that's stats. Whoops. Schedule. In terms of where I kind of expect them to be. So like I said, they've kind of split some wins here. One against Cincinnati, loss against Pittsburgh, one against Tennessee, loss against Baltimore. Should leave them for a win, but they're at a bye week, so they're coming back and facing San Fran directly after. Tough game. Cleveland has been struggling, and San Fran's like an almost unstoppable force. But they have a little bit of easier schedule later on. So Cleveland, I've said this for a minute now that I remember it, they low-key have an easy schedule later on. Indianapolis, Seattle, Arizona. Then you got outside divisional games, Denver, Los Angeles, Jacksonville's looking weaker, Chicago, Houston, New York Jets, who lost Aaron Rodgers. And of course, you got some divisional games sprinkled into there, but I mean those are easily beatable games too. Especially beat Cincinnati once already, so just beat Baltimore once, and the Steelers once again when they face off in Cleveland. It's a very this could easily be a schedule to come to 10-7. I still feel confident in them being up there with Baltimore in 10-7, 11-6 range. I'm not that bold to say that they deserve 11-6 range anymore, as much they did, because Watson has kind of not shown great stuff here. But 10-7 is definitely possible, and 11-6 still isn't the question. So they're getting some very winnable games. Probably a loss in San Fran, could probably win in Indianapolis, loss in Seattle, win in Arizona, probably lose in Baltimore, I think. I don't think they split wins with Baltimore. Win against Pittsburgh, maybe. Win against Denver. Win against Los Angeles. Win against Jacksonville, Chicago, Houston. They can easily win a lot of these games, and maybe even the game at Cincinnati. Who knows? We'll kind of see where the cards kind of lie there, but looking at the Cleveland Browns depth chart, they have also kind of suffered from depth issues, I think. Obviously, seeing Nick Chubb go out and seeing the backfield have to take a little bit of a step up, they're still kind of getting their sea legs ready. Meanwhile, defensively, they're still pretty fairly healthy. Myles Garrett, I think it was a minor stuff with him, so he'll be fine. Otherwise, it's been pretty minor on that regard of things. They've been consistently just holding up, and we'll see how much more it can continue, but I'm quite curious to see where the Cleveland Browns, they're kind of the team I want to watch right now, but I still feel confident with the way they're playing, the defense is carrying them, and offense not just being total trash. I think it's definitely possible to see Cleveland win this division still, even with the Baltimore Ravens kind of taking charge, considering all the injuries stacking up against them. Meanwhile, the team that everybody is talking about, I went over defense. The team in this division everybody's talking about, Cincinnati Bengals. Let's take a look at this right now because Joe Burrow still looks like he has the yards. Stat-wise per game, he's not completing them. 57.6% is really bad. 4.8 yards per average for throw or completion, I think. Not very good either. Actually, that's not per completion. I actually don't know what that exactly would be. It says average yards per pass attempt. Yards per game, 182 yards, not very good. It's not Joe Burrow. 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, also pretty bad. 8 sacks. Actually, I don't think I looked at Cleveland's sack. So actually, let's go do that real quick. I'm kind of curious in that regard on how the O-line's stacking up. How many sacks has Deshaun Watson had? 12. Wow. And 4 from the backup from when Deshaun Watson was out for a little bit, right? Yeah. So that's been pretty bad for the O-line there, stat-wise. So at least the Cincinnati Bengals are holding up better than they have in past years. Rushing game has always gone through Joe Mixon. It will continue to go through Joe Mixon. Joe Burrow's not moving at all right now. And they need to do something about Joe Burrow. They need to let him rest because I think Joe Burrow's just constantly getting hurt, and there's more and more pressure on him, and it's not good. It's not good for the long term of this team. If they might have, honestly, if they just bid it early on and said, all right, we're gonna have Jake Browning start, lose, probably split all their games at that point, maybe probably even be 1-3. Honestly, if they started Jake Browning, they'd probably be 1-3 anyway. So they kind of just banked on the fact maybe if we have Joe Burrow the whole season, maybe we'll be better. But I think the Cincinnati Bengals are going to kind of be a team that implodes on themselves. Either way, the rushing's not doing too much. 1 touchdown from Joe Mixon as well in terms of the ground. Jamar Chase is still easily the big target here. Receptions, 29 receptions. Well, T. Higgins still behind him. Tyler Boyd's still slowly behind him. Joe Mixon's still getting a lot of those passing yards too. Otherwise, kind of pretty quiet there. Touchdown. Let's see how many touchdowns from each person. 2 touchdowns from T. Higgins. Nobody else really touchdowns. It's still kind of going through Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, which are still very talented receiver trio with Tyler Boyd there, and a very good talented running back. They just can't get anything going, and they've just been showing that they are just not holding up very well. Meanwhile, on the sacks, the defensive side of things, 3.5 is pretty impressive from Trey Hendrickson. Meanwhile, interceptions-wise, Logan Wilson and Dax Hill. Good to see Logan Wilson kind of getting the interceptions there. Defensively, I believe they are holding up not very well, but they're mid, somewhere in the middle. I'm not going to count exactly, but they're somewhere in the middle in terms of passing yards. Whatever, not anything too remarkable. 829 yards, I believe, is what that said. Meanwhile, I'm sure similar results. No, actually, really on the end for rushing yards. So the people have been rushing all over them. They have faced off against pretty, I think, run-heavy teams, though, haven't they? Schedule. Yeah, let's go schedule now. So, yeah, looking at Cleveland, who had Nick Chubb at the time, Lamar Jackson, Kyron Williams, and then Derrick Henry, they faced off against some really big run-heavy teams, which I'm not saying their defensive line's great in terms of the run, but I think maybe it's a little bit better than this, probably somewhere bottom 10, maybe still just outside the bottom 5. Something in that regard, but they faced off against some hard-running teams, so I'm not going to fault them too much. But they obviously they had some tough divisional games. I'm not going to say they should have won those or lost those. Los Angeles, they did win that, which was really good for them. They really should have got a win against Tennessee, but Tennessee has kind of shown a little bit of spark. And the schedule isn't easy. The schedule does have some challenges, of course, especially later on. Arizona and Seattle are some beatable teams, but I think Seattle still can easily get that win. San Fran and Buffalo are going to give them hell to pay. Houston's looking more impressive as the time goes on. Baltimore and Pittsburgh, divisional opponents. Jacksonville, say what you will, they're still a talented team. Indianapolis, slightly more winnable team. Minnesota, still a winnable team. Kansas City, Cleveland, of course, very tough teams. Pittsburgh, again, divisional opponent, tough team. Cincinnati Bengals, I really thought this was their year, but they're going to keep on doing that to Joe Burrow. Their bye week is until 7, and they could definitely go 1-1 these next 2 games and really go 2-4. And even then, they're basically throwing Joe Burrow right back into the fire against some of the best defenses in the league, as San Fran and Buffalo. I don't see Cincinnati being as great as I did. I'm not going to fully count them out just yet because I think they could split wins here if they keep on playing Joe Burrow the way they are. I don't see them winning either one of these games. I'm going to give them the benefit and say they win the next 3 games, though. So that's like a 6-6, lose, split games here, 7-7. And then can they split here? I think I counted all this wrong, by the way. But they're roughly into 6 and 7, 7 and 7, probably 6 and 7. I see them going 8 and 9. They have such a tough schedule. Like, these three teams, I feel like could easily. I feel like the 18 through 16 are very, like, unless they just don't care anymore about the playoffs, are teams that could easily beat them, and I think they all could, or at least I think they could lose 3 of these 4 games right here, if you throw Minnesota in there. So it isn't looking good for Cincinnati. It's really going to depend on Joe Burrow's health, and I know in the next 4 weeks we're not really going to know the answer to that, because next time I really have the chance to do a checkup would be after week 8, which is the next time I would really, or so the halfway point would be around week 8, and at that point that's when I can talk more about Joe Burrow after their bye week. So we'll see how this goes for them. I mean, if you look at depth chart, I'm sure Joe Burrow listed as questionable. Like as always, no, he's not actually. T. Higgins though is, and Irv Smith Jr., which isn't too big of a deal. And otherwise, they haven't really suffered from too many injuries. Joe Burrow has just been hurt though, so I don't know exactly why they keep on going with the trend there for them to continue. We'll see how it continues on. Bengals may not be their year. I'll be honest, they may be going kind of downhill and maybe resurge eventually, but right now they might just be missing out on the playoffs with a poor start right now, especially if they only split their next 2 games. If they don't win these next 2 games, it may be a little bit tougher of a road for Cincinnati going to the playoffs. Anyway, going to the NFC, NFC North. Holy crap, I almost forgot the cardinal direction. We're going to go ahead and see in the middle right side of the screen, you're going to see the NFC North standings. Detroit Lions currently 3-1, leading the pack. Green Bay currently 2-2 in second place. Minnesota firmly in third with a 1-3 record, and Chicago holding down the last place with the 0-4 winless record so far. And we're gonna hopefully the winless and the undefeated and the winless teams stay that way as I review each one, because I do want to see how long each one of those teams could go without saying. So for those teams, I may say here's where I expect them to pick up their first, because I don't think any team's going to go 0-17 or 17-0. So we'll see how that goes. Anyway, beside the point, we are going to talk about the first one, then the Detroit Lions, who I think have been very impressive offensively. Look at Jared Goff, the first 1,000 yards we've seen from a QB in this video. 1,029 yards, 257.3 yards a game. Killing it. 6 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. He has thrown more interceptions than maybe he would have liked, but it's only taking 5 sacks. The offensive line of the Lions has been killing it in terms of both the run game and just keeping him safe. So really awesome to see. David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs have been an awesome duo. I've been kind of mixed feelings. I don't have Jahmyr Gibbs in any of my fantasy, so I know a lot of people are maybe a little bit more spicy against him, against Lions for drafting him. And obviously I'm not going to say anything about the draft capital and how that was spent, but the dynamic duo of David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs has been really awesome to see. And they're splitting more carries than people see. I think David Montgomery is just really talented. I think a lot of people don't give him credit. I think Jahmyr Gibbs is getting the yardage that he needs purely based on the low usage of him, because he's explosive and he gets out for those long yards. I mean, his longest, let's see, is there a longest here? 21 yards. Okay, I guess that isn't too long, but that's longer than David Montgomery's longest, and he's been, double the carries, or a little bit less than double the carries. Actually, a decent amount less, but whatever. So I'm just saying, I see this as a very dynamic duo, and I think they're using it very smart and saving Jahmyr Gibbs for the end of the season, who I'm not saying is going to be injury prone, but he keeping him safe is a better option than not. In the receiving game, I think it's been pretty actually even, considering between Amon St. Brown and Sam Laporta, who's been a very key piece of that team. Touchdowns, Amon St. Brown's still number 1, obviously. And Josh Reynolds been getting a little bit involved, and, Khalif Raymond, sure. And Jahmyr Gibbs has been more involved in the receiving game, so keep that in mind as well. Outside of that, not too much there. Defensively, less but still fine. Actually, kind of even across the board here. So gotten a lot of love for a lot of sacks here from multiple different people. Aiden Hutchinson, of course, leading the pack there. Interceptions, though, I'm very curious. Jerry Jacobs leading the pack with 2. That's pretty cool. Let's look at the Lions. I'm actually curious on their defensive stats, because historically, I've kind of known them to have a worse defense. And showing from this, their rushing rushing yards defensively has been really good and pretty solid. I mean, 3 yards per carry, 3 touchdowns allowed. What's its receiving? That's pretty dang good. I'm kind of curious now their defensive side of things on passing. Probably somewhere near the bottom, but geared toward the bottom, but not too shabby. comparable with the teams around them, especially like the 49ers and stuff. So in terms of the receiving side of things, almost bottom 10, I believe. 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Okay, so like bottom half, definitely. But they're still kind of scratching around the middle of the pack range, which is still good, especially since the offense can put up the points. So really awesome to see from Detroit. Good on Detroit for doing that stuff. Looking at their schedule, I'm curious whether they faced really good rushing teams, which they really haven't. Kenneth Walker, I guess, and Bijan. I guess, well, was Aaron Jones out this last game? I can't remember. No, he wasn't. I think they contained him, though. So, okay. So, still impressive, though. These aren't just, bad running teams, so pretty cool. One game they did lose against Seattle was in overtime, interestingly enough. But they so far have gone 3-1, and they beat some teams that, like, maybe they would struggle against. And they kind of beat two of these teams pretty handily. Lost against Seattle, which, understandable. They showed a coming out party for that kind of comeback type play. Meanwhile, Kansas City was a very big, crucial win, the only loss in Kansas City history this season so far. And then looking at their schedule, especially with the easier division they're in, kind of impressive. I mean, Baltimore, Minnesota, and Dallas are like the only 4 games I kind of see them easily losing. Or, sorry, not easily losing, but like tougher games. Obviously, I think they'll still split. Probably like Green Bay could still get a win. I think New Orleans still is I think it's leans obviously lines, but they could still beat them. Los Angeles could still beat them. Tampa Bay could still beat them. Take that as you will. But I think these are very winnable games for the Lions, and I think this is a very winnable schedule for them. And honestly, can I see them going 11-6? With this schedule, I could, because I think I see a loss in Dallas, maybe split with Minnesota, so that's 2 losses there. Give maybe Green Bay a win, 3. Give Los Angeles a win, 4. Baltimore a win, 5. I think every other game is kind of winnable, like easily winnable. Maybe give them one more loss, I get them 10-7. But I still lean 11-6 range right now that they're on pace to do that. And I'm kind of excited to see some of these games because there's some good, low-key good games. Carolina, Tampa Bay. Los Angeles, New Orleans, kind of fun games to match up against the Lions. So, pretty cool there. I don't know if they really suffered from too many injuries. Didn't seem like it, but I'm going to look anyway. Hendon Hooker apparently out. Didn't know that one. Heard Will Levis is also out, which was interesting to me. Defensively, they're actually suffering from quite a few. I don't know. I guess it's not really as much starters, though. C.J. Gardner-Johnson's out. He's actually out for the season, isn't he? Dang. Aquara, oh my gosh, I can't remember how you say that, but I believe he was a starter as well. So suffering a little bit in the defensive side of things, but luckily it doesn't seem like any too big of names aside from maybe C.J. Gardner-Johnson, which is kind of unfortunate for their secondary. Either way, though, some very winnable games. Detroit Lions are kind of doing solid so far, and I expect a lot of more fun from them, too. Meanwhile, kind of update, 14-3 Seahawks over the Giants so far. Not really surprised so far. Meanwhile, we're going to go to Green Bay, who has been a very interesting team to watch and see the emotional roller coaster that the team has taken them on. Jordan Love has been pretty impressive. 8 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. 8 touchdowns is the most we've seen in today's video. 901 yards, 225.3 yards a game. He's been doing solid. And he doesn't have like the best weapons around him outside of maybe the run game, which A.J. Dillon so far has gotten more of the love there, just because Aaron Jones kind of been iffy about whether he's able to actually play the games lately. Otherwise, he's also been successful rushing. 2 touchdowns, 72 yards. Jordan Love's been doing pretty good and pretty solid. I know he doesn't look the best. 56.1 completion percentage isn't the most impressive percentage in the world. He still doesn't look bad out there. He's still getting the groove of things. First season that he's actually starting. Jordan Love is, making me appreciate him a lot more. And receiving game, Romeo Doubs and Jaden Reed have been kind of splitting a lot of those yards. But, Romeo Doubs still more of the favorite there. Luke Musgrave kind of get involved. Outside of that, pretty nothing. For a lot of yardage, Romeo Doubs still leading up touchdowns there. Christian Watson, I don't know exactly what's going on with him. I think he was injured, and I don't know when he's coming back. I'll check that, actually, when we get to the depth chart. Outside of that, let's see their sacks. I don't know how defensively done. I feel like they've been a very grindy team. Rashawn Gary, 3.5 sacks. Kenny Clark, 2 sacks. Carl Brooks, 2. Devontae Wyatt, 2.5. Lucas Van Ness. He was a rookie this year, wasn't he? One sack there. kind of Quay Walker, Rudy Ford, Russell Douglas kind of get some interceptions there. Look at their defense standing so far. So in passing, they are kind of upper half, it looks like. So pretty good there. About what's it called, right here in the middle, about 789 yards, 64.9 percentage completion. Higher end on that regard, but okay. Rushing percentage or rushing yards. We'll go scroll down some more. They have led up a lot of rushing yards, and I'm curious to see what kind of teams they faced off on the schedule now, because they've been bottom 5 in terms of rushing yards. Chicago, not very run heavy. Bijan, I guess, is run heavy. David Montgomery in Detroit, pretty run heavy, but I wouldn't say they're even a run heavy team. New Orleans, not, I mean, Alvin Kamara wasn't back yet, so not really. They just have a really bad rushing defense, apparently. It's kind of interesting. And how many? I think it was only sacked 3 times, right? Correct me if I'm wrong, for Jordan Love. 8 times. 8 times. 8, 3, and 8. So offensive line has been doing all right. So that's good to see. But Green Bay has some varying rows ahead of them, because I still think they're a mid-team. If you see the teams they've beaten and lost to, New Orleans was a team, mid-team. Granted, it was closer than I think it should have been. Atlanta was a very beatable team, but they kept it close. They're making a lot of these games, which should be easier on paper for them to win, kind of close, and that's not really too good for them. So now, am I going to pick Las Vegas over them? I still think they can beat Denver, but maybe split there. How are they going to do against Minnesota and their high-powered offense? Will the defense of Minnesota actually stop the offense there? Then they also face Kansas City and the Chargers and Tampa Bay. They face Minnesota twice, of course. Pittsburgh. They could be a team that gives them trouble. The Los Angeles Rams, they can give them some trouble. So even though with 2 wins right now, they're kind of looking like they can get a win in Week 5 or Week 7. They have an early bye week. They probably split with Minnesota. That's 2 wins there. Maybe split the win there, 3. I don't see them win any of those next 3 games. Then you got Week 14. They can win that game. Lose in Tampa Bay. Win against Carolina, ? Win against Chicago, so maybe 8 and 9. I still see them dropping one of those random games and going 7 and 10 though. I think I'm getting less hopeful just because they're keeping games closer than they should be. And I think as time goes on, unless they kind of get keep on getting lucky games, it could end up being an 8 and 9 kind of, or 7 and 10 type of record. Maybe 8 and 9, but I see them still just missing the playoffs. And I think we'll see how Minnesota kind of stacks up with the rest of their schedule, but it's looking very iffy for the Packers, and they need to find a consistent game plan, and Jordan Love needs to get comfy quick, and maybe after Week 6 bye week, maybe we'll be able to get that from him. So we'll see. Either way, we're moving to Minnesota, literally and figuratively. No, I'm kidding. That's just figuratively. Wow. Murphy cool with Swift Saga. Eyes anti-hero role. Cool. The Vikings, of course, 1 and 3 currently, but Kirk Cousins has been killing it. Offensively, they've been awesome. 11 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 10 sacks, somewhere in the middle there. Rushing, they've been fine. Alexander Madison has clearly been the number 1 there, and Cam Akers kind of came in, but I still think we can continue to see Alexander Madison for the big times. Receiving, it's been a Justin Jefferson game. T.J. Hawkinson's played a little bit, and Jordan Addison's gotten a little bit of love, but it's Justin Jefferson's game there. 543 yards this early on. It's so crazy. He's on pace for 2,000 yards right now if he keeps it up. 3 touchdowns. 2 really touchdown-heavy team so far, with T.J. Hawkinson getting 2, Jordan Addison 2, Alexander Madison even 1 in the air. So pretty impressive receiving-wise. Defensively, they've been struggling, but obviously stat-wise, they're not struggling. I did not realize Danielle Hunter, I think is how you say it. 5 sacks, pretty dang good. Harrison Smith even got 3, I think mostly from this last game, too, if I remember correctly. Interceptions, turnovers, basically, only 1. A little bit weaker in that regard, but their offense has been the thing carrying them, and also the defense has been the thing that's been struggling to help them keep up. So we'll see how that kind of shows, but if you look at the defensive side of things, come on, they got to be at least bottom half for both of these, really. Stat-wise, the Vikings are they're still, I guess, in the bottom-ish half, maybe somewhere in the middle in terms of rushing yards, but I guess that's rushing yards. Passing yards where it kind of more so matters in the long scheme of things, but they got to be lower on the ground. No. But I guess they let up touchdowns. I guess that's the key thing. What's happening then? So they don't have an awful defense, statistically at least, either way. But they've just been losing games. And it kind of makes me want to look at their schedule now and kind of do analysis. Tampa Bay was a lower scoring game, so offense really didn't pick up there. The Eagles are a hard team, but there was high scoring. Chargers were a mid-scoring team there. Carolina was a win, but was lower scoring. So the first time that really, Kirk Cousins really didn't do much. It's kind of weird. I don't know, because they face off against some pretty good offenses, but still don't have an awful defense, or still don't have awful defensive statistics behind them. So it's kind of curious where exactly the losses are coming from. Is it just 3 and outs that kind of come unfortunate timing? Is the coaching staff? I'm actually kind of curious myself, looking at this statistically, because I'm seeing all this for the first time. I don't analyze this and kind of interpret it for you guys, because I'm learning with y'all when it goes on here. So if y'all have any answers to that, kind of explain that to me, because that's actually a very curious thing. How are they like a bottom half receiving yards and like a bottom-ish half rushing yards, but like still in that middle ground and 1 and 3? I guess. I guess they're losing close games. I guess that's probably one explanation for it. All these games have been one score. Even though it's been statistically kind of impressive, I guess they have entered the end zone a lot in higher scoring games overall. So still curious though how you kind of get that, and it's been 3 tougher teams. So we'll see. Either way, kind of looking at their schedule, it is kind of curious. Winnable, but very difficult in the same regard. San Fran, Kansas City are 2 games they shouldn't expect to win, but they could. Still, obviously, any team can win. Every other game's pretty winnable, though. But, I mean, they've shown... I guess those are 3 teams that we could expect them to lose to. Maybe not Tampa Bay early on, but... These are all games they should win, but they're still going to end up splitting a lot of them. And that's what makes me nervous. And that's where I'm kind of getting more nervous about the 10-7 record size, when 9-8 might seem a lot more likely for them, because I mean, let's just look. They're 1 and 3 currently, so 3 losses. They lose against Kansas City. They probably lose against San Fran. We'll give them 1 loss against Green Bay. We'll give them a loss against Atlanta or New Orleans. Take your picks. 7 losses so far. They could lose against either Cincinnati or Las Vegas. That's 8. Then they probably lose at least 1 to Detroit. So that's 9. So that's like an 8-9 record, actually. So I could see them getting that 9-8 record. I'm going to still lean that way just because I still feel like they can pick up the steam, especially with a Week 13 bye week. Maybe that refreshes them for the long haul here. Maybe pick up 5 wins in a row or something. But it might be a tougher road starting 1 and 3 for them to really get their grooves going, because there's a lot of mid teams here that they've just been playing down to. So we'll see how that kind of goes further on. Their depth chart, I don't remember hearing too many injuries from them either. Which, I mean, looks like nothing too... Oh, Garrett Bradbury's out, though, center. That's pretty important. Dalton Reisner is a backup now. I did not realize that. Interesting. Oh. Go figure. Beside that point, it's Minnesota Vikings. This is actually, the NFC North makes me kind of want to wait more after seeing statistics to do another analysis on them. We'll see though. We'll just see in their halfway checkpoint and see where they kind of line up. But I'm still feeling the 8-9, 9-8 record. Still barely missing the playoffs, I think. I think I actually did have them in the playoffs too, for my preseason predictions. I can't remember exactly, but still curious. Beside the point, we're on to our last team for the North Cardinal direction. I don't know how long this video has necessarily been going. It's been going for a hot minute now. Yeah, it's been about 49 minutes of me recording. I don't know how long that translates to actually me recording for the video. But currently we have our first winless team. Look at our stats. They did pad their stats a little bit this last game, so 861 yards. Last game was like 300 yards added to it, so this could really be more of a 600, 700 yard per one. But they did face Denver Broncos with a weaker defense, so we'll take that as you will. 215.3 yards per game, 861 yards, 7 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, lots of sacks. He's been going through it, and I think the sacks is actually not as much on the offensive lines from what I remember seeing of the games. He's a scrambling quarterback who doesn't stay in the pocket, and he's been successful, yeah, in the rushing game, but not very successful, outside of that. It feels like he's halftime doing well with it and halftime getting sacked. I'm not saying that literally, but not very impressive in that regard. The rushing game is Khalil Herbert, but it's not been anything too special. First rushing game I've not been too impressed with. I mean, Justin Fields is just putting himself in harm's way for a subpar rushing attempt. What's his long there, actually? I'm kind of curious. I mean, 20 is his long after 28 carries. I don't know. DJ Moore did get an impressive game last game, 2 touchdowns. Or no, he didn't get 2 touchdowns last game, I don't believe. But he's gotten a lot of yards. He's still getting a lot of targets. Cole Kmet's coming a lot more relevant in that offense, too. Outside of that, though, Darnell Mooney kind of staying relevant. Chase Claypool was relevant for 1 game, I believe. outside of that, I don't see much going on from them. Sacks wise, let's see. I actually don't remember seeing any sacks from them. I'm kind of curious if they have. One sack. Wow, they've gotten 2 total sacks. Wow, that's bad. Wow, that's freaking bad. Their defense is doing crap. 2 interceptions though. That's pretty cool to see for them. Defensively though, they gotta be bottoming out. I mean, Bears, they're bottom 3 with their rushing or their yardage defense. I mean, outside of the Broncos, who got fucking 70 bombed, and Chargers, who've had some very big blow games. Good God. Rushing, I'm actually curious about this one too, because I feel like they face some more rush-heavy teams. But the Bears actually not even, they're bottom half. They're bottom 10, maybe 3, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. No, they're bottom 14. 462 yards allowed, 3.8 yards per carry. How many touchdowns allowed, actually, out of curiosity? 4. Not too bad. But I don't think they face very rush-heavy teams. I thought they originally did, but I guess maybe seeing from that, maybe they haven't. Aaron Jones, Rashad White, Isaiah Pacheco, Javonte Williams. Yeah, that's not been very good rush-heavy teams. So, and I don't think they face many rush-heavy teams. I guess Austin Eckler, if he's back. David Montgomery. Wow, okay, they actually kind of get fortunate with only like 3 or 4 more rushing kind of defense teams. So they might actually maintain that little record area. It's kind of cool to see. All right, so of course the Chicago Bears are a winless team, which brings up an interesting conversation. When are they going to get their first win? And I'm predicting them to going to Washington. I think Washington's still decent. We'll get to them eventually. They don't have anything stats or defensive line stuff. No, we're good. Okay, let's talk about their previous games. So they lost against Green Bay, divisional opponent. Not very close game. Tampa Bay, kind of the same case. Kansas City, kind of the same case. But kept up with Denver. One of the worst teams in the whole NFL, unfortunately, of course. Washington, decent team. They're still probably going to win, especially at home. Minnesota, they should likely pick up a win. I don't think it's going to be a game they throw, especially with it being 3, them being like 1-3 right now. Still risky, but I think they're still fine. Las Vegas is maybe their first beatable team in the coming weeks. I think they're still decent enough defensively to hold them off. I'm saying that Las Vegas is their first definitely possible win. I'm not saying I'm favoring them there, but I think that's like the first team I'm seeing. Like I'm kind of hesitating. Chargers should win. They're not that bad at throwing leads. And New Orleans, Carolina, if they don't win in Las Vegas or win against Las Vegas, I should say, they're gonna win against either New Orleans or Carolina. Eventually, if Carolina and Bears are winless teams leading up to the point being 0-9 or whatever their bye weeks will lead to, one of them will have to win. So I don't think Carolina will lose for that long, though. I do think the New Orleans Saints is probably my bet to say that are going to be the first team that gets beat by the Bears. Because outside of that, I actually see a lot of teams that are a lot of tougher teams. Obviously, I don't see them winning very much. I still see them 2-15, which is lower, and I think I expect it's like 3-14, 4-12, 13 or something like that for them. Because I don't see them beating any other teams, maybe except for Arizona, maybe Atlanta. It's like New Orleans, Carolina, and Arizona and Atlanta, maybe splitting those games like 2-15. That's kind of where I'm leaning, but I'm going to say 3-14 is still very possible, just because I can see Las Vegas dropping a win. So I'm going to say 3-14 right now, my ended projection for them. Looking at their depth chart, let's see if they're facing any injuries. I actually don't know. I haven't kept up with this at all, which actually they have. Offensive line-wise, they've kind of suffered from depth issues because I think some of these guys were starters, weren't they? Tevin Jenkins, was he not a starter? Braxton Jones, wasn't he the starter? I guess not with Larry Borom and Cody White here there. I guess not. Defensively, they're fine enough. Eddie Jackson's apparently out. Is that out or questionable? I can't tell if there was like a cue there or whatever. But anyways, was that the point? Chicago Bears 0-4. Yikes. Not good for them. I don't see them doing much better. They also have Nathan Peterman. That's good. That's good tidings for them. I didn't realize they had Nathan Peterman. Otherwise, that's kind of my thoughts overall of the North Cardinal direction. And it's a lot to take in there. I think there's a lot to take in from each of the North teams. I kind of gave my thoughts and kind of projected it. Saw the stats. That was kind of cool to see. And we'll see how the rest of these teams go. Chicago maybe picking up a win around week 8, maybe week 7, I believe. Week 7 or 9-ish, 7 through 9-ish, maybe they can pick up the first win, go 1-6, 1-7, 1-8. One of those two records maybe. Either way, I enjoyed this kind of video, kind of just talking about the overall season in general. Maybe I'll continue this again. I should continue at least for this quarter checkup. We'll see if I continue again for half checkup. But if you like it, let me know down below and give me a like, comment, subscribe, and tune in for us over videos where we're doing predictions, power rankings, stuff like that. Thank you guys for watching. StraightA Dawson, out.